delighted to get a few minutes with Ali, who's a senior electronics engineer at Cummins. Ali, thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
Hey Viraj, good seeing you. Hope you're doing well. And yeah, I'm excited for this podcast.
Absolutely amazing. So let's start with your background. Which university did you go to? What was your major? And when did you graduate?
Right. So I went to Purdue University. I did my bachelor's in mechanical engineering. I graduated after 4.5 years instead of 4 years. So I graduated in December 2018. And that was because I did one long semester internship, which I really enjoyed. So yeah.
Gotcha. So December 2018 is when you graduated, right? All right. So the timing of beginning your job search, full-time job search after graduation. When did you start searching for job opportunities in the US?
Right. So when it comes to full time, I think I started almost like 8 to 10 months before graduating. So I would say I was in a pretty decent situation because I had three internships with Cummins. So I was fairly confident that I could get a full time offer after those three internships, especially because two of them were under the same manager. So I was hoping that he liked me enough to get me back. But with respect to other companies, I started looking, I would say, between Jan to March of 2018 is when I just started, just scouting that what I was interested in. I'd say my job search was kind of targeted, so I didn't try to like think of hundred or thousands of companies. I was just looking at 10 to 15 companies that I was really eager to work at.
Nice. So that's a great thing that you did because a lot of times I've seen people would just start searching for job opportunities almost 4 months before graduation date, but you started almost 8 or 9 months before the graduation
Right.
date, and that's so key. The sooner you start, the better. Looking back, what advice would you give to yourself in regards to the timing of when you started your job search?
Right. I think I was okay with when I started it. I don't think there was too much I would have changed at that time. I also think it was because of my situation that I kind of knew I would probably get a full time offer from Cummins. So I wouldn't. I would say starting early is always good, like you said. Starting too early might not work, so you need to find a good in between. And I think the important part is starting job search doesn't mean you start applying. It means you start asking yourself, what do you like? What do you want to work on? What companies out there, in our case, are hiring international students? I'm not saying you don't apply to the other companies, but you can then create a list of companies that are like your priority. So I think I did all of that pretty well. And I think it was good. 8, 10 months was a good in between. It wasn't too early, wasn't too late. So yeah, I think I was
Absolutely.
quite happy.
So let's talk about the approach you took when you were searching for job opportunities. Again, going back to I believe January, I guess January, February, 2018. Back in that day, what were you doing in regards to, all right, this is how I need to approach my job search? How did you do it?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. So approaching job searches, I feel like there's so many different ways, so many good ways. The way that I like to go about, and this is because when I look back on why I did mechanical engineering, it was because I was really passionate about engines, cars, anything that moved on the road. So I had a pretty clear path, a clear idea on what I like. So when I started looking at job search, I was like, okay, it's simple. I need to look at what companies either are directly involved in this automotive industry or indirectly involved. So I started by listing these companies down. Obviously, now today everything's online. Purdue has some great resources, so I guess I can start listing it. Right, just going online and looking at what companies are hiring international students, and a lot of them you already know of, right? Then going on Purdue's websites on their career resources and seeing that who all are coming for the career fairs. And that time, obviously, it was in person. Now things have changed a little. But in-person career fairs, what companies are going to be coming, and which of those hire international students. So I started making like a list like that, and then prioritizing within that list that which ones I was interested in, which ones I want. This was the initial step. Then once I was interested, I was like, okay, how am I going to get to actually effectively getting myself out there for the company? So there are several ways, right? one approach I took was, now let's say a company that's not coming to Purdue for any of the career fairs. For those companies, I started seeing if I could find recruiters on LinkedIn, right, who were willing to connect, and go on their website and find if there were open positions that I was interested in. So then what I'd do is I would, for the open position I was interested in, prepare everything. If it needed a cover letter, prepare a cover letter. If it needed my resume to be updated, I would update my resume and all of that. And then once I had that all ready, then I would see if I could reach out to a recruiter and tell them, hey, I'm really interested in this position. I have already all the documents ready. I've applied for it. Could you tell me something more, or could you help me out with this application process? Didn't always work, but I felt like that was an effective, structured way of going about it. This was, again, like one kind of approach. Then obviously the companies were coming for IRs, career fairs. I took those career fairs very seriously. Even when I had internships, when I had jobs, I was there. Full day, I would be at the career fair and talk to these companies. Again, you've been at Purdue career fairs. They're very, very crowded. So you can't go to all companies, and you should not also. But you target the companies that you feel resonate with your interest, and you go to them, you talk to them, put yourself out there. Again, all of this, nothing's going to work 100%. Many times they'll take your resume, they'll be like, oh, we're sorry, we don't have anything, stuff like that. But at least you give yourself that opportunity. So I think career fairs and this online through LinkedIn and the company's website were two of the approaches I kind of took when I started my job search.
Amazing. And the beauty of job search really is that you don't really have a right or wrong answer as to how you approach job search. It varies. I mean, you'll see people getting jobs through just applying online, and sometimes that doesn't work for someone. So there's no right or wrong answer. And the another thing that you mentioned that really stands out is that you knew what you liked. That's so
Right,
important. That's a key. I mean, a lot of times people might not really know where they want to be. They want to keep their options open, and they would just
right,
sparkle their resume into like different companies. And I mean, in hindsight, like that usually won't work. I mean, you have to be very deliberate and intentional about where
yeah,
you want to go, like which industry, what kind of roles you want to look at, and then you narrow it down and then you focus on that because that's what's going to make you happy long term. Um,
right. I think one more thing I'd like to add to that is also just having your priorities set right. Like for some people, location is a very important thing. They're like, I want to do a job on the West Coast. I want to do a job on the East Coast. For some people, it's like, I want to do this. Like I want, in my case, let's say it's I want to work on things that move. Then even if you make me work in a place that doesn't seem like the best place for me to live in, I'm okay. Till I'm waking up to this, it's good. So you have to ask, I think, in the very preliminary stages of your job search, you have to ask yourself these questions. That what are my priorities? If your priorities I want to live in a certain city, then you might have to compromise on the work you do, but you might get that certain city. So I think this is a good point that it should be a little targeted. I understand the international students' options are limited, but keeping it too wide means you might just apply to 1,000 companies, not really put in enough effort to get into any.
Absolutely.
Versus you apply to 10 companies, but put enough effort to get into those 10.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that I've noticed is that we get influenced by what our peers are doing. So when you talked about the location, everyone gets excited when one of our peers is gonna go to a major metropolitan city, and that's
Right,
fine. I mean, that maybe that's right for them. Maybe they celebrate that, but be mindful that you don't have to get influenced by that celebration. Like you mentioned, right? It's your priority, right? If you prioritize location, great. If you don't, like, don't let the environment get you influenced because at the end of the day, you have to do what's gonna satisfy you rather than just looking good, I guess, on paper. Uh, Looking back, when you talked about the job search approach that you took, looking back, what worked and what didn't work?
right. That's a great question. So, what worked? I think for me, the career fairs have worked to a good extent. Mostly when I've spoken to companies, have managed to get interviews. And I think, honestly, if no matter how many job offers you already have, I think you should always go to a career fair. I'm sure there's always a few companies out there interested in. career fairs have in the past worked for me. Usually whatever companies hire international, and that this is a big thing for us, right? Not every company hires. So whichever companies hire, I have managed to at least get some interview or some positive response from them, whichever ones I've gone to, obviously. So that has worked pretty well. I'd say the online job search is a hit or a miss. A lot of recruiters have never replied to me, even though I've sent them, and I'm not kind of oversend them stuff. I've just said, hey, I'm interested in this position. I've already applied online, and here's like my resume or whatever. Not trying to send them like an entire. I understand they're also human beings. They probably get these messages every day. I don't want to send them 1,000 lines saying why I'm a good candidate. Just want like a short introduction. So that has been a hit or a miss. But I feel like I still feel that that method does work sometimes. It's worth giving a shot.
Mm-hmm.
Might not always work. And yeah, just sometimes applying online, like where you can't even connect with the recruiter, is probably been my least efficient method. Where, and I think you probably even know this, where you apply online, you never hear back from a company.
Yeah.
I am still curious to how companies actually do the online applications, whether they even look at us or no. But yeah, that's probably been my worst and not really worked that much.
Got it. So let's talk about actually getting interviews from the company that you applied for. I mean, we have come across situations where we all apply and we don't get any response. Like you mentioned, we don't get any interviews from the companies. What did you do to get interviews from the companies you applied for?
Right. So what did I do to get interviews?
To get interviews specifically, I know we apply for it, but I really want to work for this company in this particular position. I want to get the interview.
Right. I think one solid thing that really works is if you know within the company what position you're kind of trying to apply for, try networking with, again, this is not recruiters, but with engineers from the company, with people from the company who actually work in those positions. You will get to learn a lot more. The other thing is if you are giving an in-person elevator pitch at a career fair and you want to get an interview, I think one thing that really worked for me is, again, I usually used to go mostly to companies that were automotive focused because I had a strong affinity towards it. So highlight, why that industry matters to you and what you think you can bring to it. So make sure you're very clear about what you're telling them. Don't just go about, oh, I've done 100 classes and I can do this and I know MATLAB, I know Simulink, I know CATIA. I feel like knowing different things is one thing, but people want to see members who can bring some leadership quality, who actually care a little bit about that company and that industry. If you have that, then maybe the skills you can learn later. So I think that works for career fairs. I think that really helped me get interviews. Online, I think, actually one more thing that I could highlight to get interviews is leverage your network. So when I say leverage your network, here's what I mean. Let's say I am a senior in college and you graduated a year before me. If you are at Cummins, right? I know we have probably worked together on some projects or something. I can at least send you a nice email and ask you that, hey, does Cummins have a referral system? Or within Cummins, are you aware if they're hiring for this position? So that is something I didn't mention earlier, and something I didn't do too much during my job search, but I have done later in my life, which is leverage your network. The fact that you went to college here, you know people, you should know a lot of people, right? Like you've been in ME at Purdue, 500, 600 students. Out of that, many of them, you could say, are good friends or friends of yours. So no, I'm not saying you're telling them, give me the job. You're saying, hey, you're in this company, I find this really interesting. Could you just pass my resume on, or could you refer me? That's it. If it goes good, if it doesn't, it doesn't. So that's one more way which would get you interviews, I think. Then, like I said, career fairs, if you can go there with clear thoughts, with a clear elevator pitch. So go prepared. There's no harm in going prepared. Like, don't think, oh, I'm going to go impromptu. And no, if you're someone who needs to work on your elevator pitch, work a day before, work 2 days before, write it down. Think about what you're going to say. Don't just say anything that comes to your mind at those fairs. And I think online, I think the only interviews I managed to get were mostly doing internships, like when I was applying for internships. And I think that time, it was again the same kind of thing, just showing how passionate I was. why that company and that work mattered to me. I think those were some things I usually, obviously, I highlight other things related to the job, but I think these were the main things that no matter what industry you're in or what job you're searching for, if you say these things, I think they make a kind of a difference.
And that is such an important point because I think as an international student, I know I went through this, but I really did not understand why companies would care about the emotional aspect of working for a particular company or a particular role. And when you talk about the emotional aspect, it really is the passion, right? You were absolutely passionate about automobile and you showed that. I never personally understood why that's important, but now looking back, I could have improved that. That, hey, like, all right, you have these technical skills on your resume, great, fine. Pretty much everyone's got that. But why do you care about this company or this role? That is so important. I've seen that now since I'm working in the corporate world. It is so important. I mean, managers, directors are going to ask you that question once you start your work experience and once you start interviewing for other companies while you're working. It is such an important insight. So now looking back, uh, what worked and what didn't work in regards to getting the interviews. You talked about the approach that you took. Networking was a key one that you mentioned that you did not do, that you thought you should have done. You talked about other things as well. What worked for the most part and what didn't work?
Right. So I think what worked was what I already hit on, which is going there, showing my passion. I think one more thing that I'd like to say is also when I say that why you care about the company, it's good to study the company and understand their values also. I'm not saying you fool them that you believe in those values, but actually ask yourself, do you believe in those values?
Yes.
So you've been at Cummins, you actually know about some of Cummins' values, very strong, very strongly embedded here. Uh, you know, I've been an intern at Tesla, known about their values, their style, fast paced, get stuff done, that kind of attitude. So yeah, so that works. Like I said, like when you talk about the company and why you want to be there, don't just talk about the company and say, "Oh, you're a great company, I want to work there." No, understand their style, what matters to them. Then see, does that matter to you? And if you start aligning, yes, that this company really cares about diversity. Oh, I really care about diversity. So that is when they realize that this guy would make a good team member. So this works. I'd say when you say what did not work, maybe sometimes I'd say my approach was a little laid back in some ways that I'd go to like 2, 3 companies. If I got an interview and those were my top 2, 3, I'd end up going to some others where I would probably not put in that much effort. And in hindsight, I was like, I should not have done that. I should have put effort. Fine, just because I had another offer or other interview, that did not mean that not putting effort in the other company didn't matter. You don't know what opportunity could come your way. So I would say that even if you have some opportunities already for you, don't limit yourself. Like still push a little harder. I feel like I start getting a little laid back because I was like, oh, I already have one offer. I have some interviews from other companies I like, so I'm good. Like, do I want to consider these other companies? But maybe they had interesting roles, but I just didn't, put that much effort to go all the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, keep at it. I think don't.
Keep at
it's
it, yep.
easy to just get a little, laid back or feeling like, oh, I'm done.
Yeah.
Uh,
The thing that you mentioned about the values, you have the company values and you have your own personal values, and you want to make sure that they're as much aligned as possible, and that company is probably going to be the right fit for you. The key thing really is also to know what your values are. I mean, a lot of times we are not conscious about our own values. Like we don't
right.
really know, all right, what do I value? In some situations, we might value a particular thing, but in other situations, we might value something else. And so, even just in retrospect, I think that's important to know as well, consciously, what you value. And then only you can say that, okay, these are the things that I value, and this is what the company is offering. And the importance of aligning with the value, I personally think, is that at times when you're working at a particular company, you will come across situations where you cannot objectively come to a right or wrong answer. You have to rely on values to get the most optimal answer.
Right.
There are going to be situations where you cannot prove mathematically that, hey, this decision is right and this decision is wrong. It
Right.
will come down to values, and that is why values are extremely critical in any company that you join. But that's a great point that you mentioned, Ali, that aligning your values with your company's values is so critical for just uh, giving the best in the company.
Yeah, and actually, I'll add one thing to that. Yeah, and I feel like a lot of times, one thing that happens among younger people like us is we're like, oh, I want to work at a startup, right? Why not? Sounds cool. I'm young. I think I am intelligent, so let's work at a startup. But you're probably working 12 hours a day, 12, 13 hours a day sometimes. And maybe that doesn't align with your lifestyle. So, like some of us, in college, we used to say, oh, we want to work out, we want to do this, I want to cook, I want to eat. If you want to do all that and then you want to work at a startup, it's probably not going to happen. So same thing, like I said earlier, don't get carried away. Just because my friend is working at a startup, I should not be like, wow, it's so cool. I also want to be at a startup. Maybe my lifestyle, I get more happiness from cooking, working out, and all of that. I need to do that with work to keep myself happy, keep myself healthy. Right? Sure, he's working 12 hours a day, but not getting sleep, not getting good food. That works for him. He might be loving it. So understand yourself. I think the entire job search process also involves understanding yourself as a person.
Yes.
Don't go by, oh, because startups are cool, everyone wants to be there, then I'm going to be there. Well, you might be there, but you might hate it. Like, accept that. Don't feel like, oh, no, everyone should love working at a startup because it's the coolest thing to do. It's not that straightforward.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So, preparing for the interviews, you've got an interview, you've got your first interview from the company that you applied for, the companies that you spoke to during the career fair. How did you prepare for your interviews?
Right. Great question. And this is, I think, a very, very important one. I think people take very different approaches for this, but my approach, I try to be structured when I prepare for interviews. So, first thing is, for starters, know who you're interviewing with, if you can. So, if they've told you you're going to be interviewing with this person, try finding out a little about them. It helps. It helps you think of it, right? When you're having a conversation with someone you know versus someone you don't know, there's a big difference. I'm talking to you right now, I know you. It's easy. Talking to someone I don't know, I'm like, I don't know what to say, I don't know what's going on. So first thing I usually start is, if I know who I'm interviewing with, LinkedIn is there are different places. The company website sometimes have people. Go and find out a little bit about them. Don't need to find too much, but like, what is their background? What do they work on? So do that. The next step, I think, is obviously depending on what interview it is. There are different ways to prepare. So behavioral interviews, I think you just, I guess you just focus on yourself. You make sure that when you're answering, you can probably come up with a few situations in your head before the interview that you could talk about. But I feel like there's no one real way to prepare for behavioral interviews. As long as you're honest, if you've been in college, I am sure you had some kind of experience of everything. Mm-hmm. Means you've always been in a bad team or a hard team to work with. You probably had some awkward situations with professors or with, it always happens. So the situations are there. Just make sure that a day before the interview, you actually probably write them down or think them through, depending on what kind of, what way works for you. I'm a person who likes writing. So I usually just write down these situations that, okay, if they were to ask me a question on this item, I'll just write the situation. I don't write down like a paragraph. I know that once I've thought about the situation, I can elaborate on it. So that's behavioral interviews. I kind of don't put that much effort. I'd say technical interviews, when you get those, identify what that role requires. Then you start asking yourself, okay, that in school I've done all this. Are my fundamentals good? They should be good, hopefully. If you're a good student, you will have strong fundamentals. Try going a little in depth then with those fundamentals. I think in most technical interviews, nobody's going to ask you specific questions. So for example, if you're giving a technical interview with Cummins, they're not going to ask you how the inner working, if you're doing it for, let's say, an engine controls position, like what I work in, they're not going to ask you how exactly the controller for some part of the engine works. They'll not ask you that. But they might ask you, hey, why would I, or how would I design a PI controller for this? Generic question. We work with PI controllers in mechanical engineering. You should probably know that answer, right? If you have paid attention in class. So I'd say brush up on your fundamentals, right? And I guess, you have to back yourself with those. And don't go too much in depth. Don't overthink it. Stick to these, and when you get a question, prepare yourself for this. This is the most important thing in my opinion. when you get a question and you feel, oh, I don't exactly know the answer, try working yourself, and you have to mentally kind of train yourself for this. Try working yourself to at least somewhere towards the answer. If I have done a few interviews, I like students who do that. But students who just tell me I don't know the answer, I'm like at work a lot of times. I also don't know the answer, but I don't sit and say I don't know the answer and shut my work. Right? I say, okay, I don't know the answer. It's fine. Let's see. I'll probably try going in some direction. Right? Give a shot. See if I can find some resources. Use that, and eventually I get to an answer. So if I see a student who is mentally prepared to start trying to break down the problem, then I will also help him to actually get to the answer. So I think that just mentally preparing yourself for that, focusing on your fundamentals for technical interviews, and understanding who you're talking to. I think these are three things I kind of try to focus on. And yeah, when I'm in the interview, I make sure this is also, I think, just a little important. Right now, it's more video interviews, but when back then it was like in person. I make sure that that day I've like eaten well, I'm well dressed, because at the end of the day, they're not just judging you for the work; they're also judging you as, hey, I'm going to see this person with me every day at work, right? Do I want to see this person every day? I'm not saying that we should make a decision based on how someone is dressed entirely or stuff like that, but nothing wrong in creating a good impression. So make sure that you're presenting your best self, because why not? I'm sure all of us like being well dressed and sharp. So try being as well dressed as sharp as you can. So at least you have that out of the way. They should not look at you and or should not get distracted looking at you and think, oh, that this guy looks like he just ran and came to this interview. So all of that, I think, should work.
Nice. So looking back, what worked and what didn't work? You talked about what worked, but when you're preparing for interviews, maybe perhaps put yourself back in the situation where you had your first interview, and you might have experienced a few things. There were a few learning curves through that first experience, through those few first experiences. What didn't work?
Yeah, I think what didn't work was more like preparation point. I think it was all right from my end. I think during the interviews, if the first interview I got really nervous. I was like not sure. Even though I knew things, I was like, it was just not coming out right. But I would also say one more thing that probably did not work in my situation, let me think, would be that for some of these interviews, they actually got really, really technical.
Okay.
So there, I think my approach of just focusing on fundamentals sometimes did backfire. I'm still a strong advocate that they should not be getting that technical, but they did. Like you have my resume as the interviewee, so you know what I've done. So, and this is, let's say, specifically for a job I applied to where it was automotive, but a different kind of industry, so like electrified, and I didn't have so much experience on it. So what I thought is that because there's a controls position, they will probably focus more on my controls fundamentals. Like, hey, does this guy know how PI control works, or does he know how something else about like state space control or stuff like that, stuff we had done in school. But they actually start focusing on battery tech and exactly within batteries how you would control certain things. And I was like, oh. So I then went to that second approach of mine, which was, hey, if you don't know the answer, but if you back yourself with your fundamentals, ask them questions, try reaching an answer. You might not reach it, but they like it. And it worked. In that sense, they like me. But obviously, this was, when I gave this interview, I was a lot more experienced with interviews. So I was able to maneuver through it. But I think that was the one time that this approach of just focusing on fundamentals didn't work. Like, I hope I'd actually studied more about battery technology and gone, which is a little weird because, they had my resume. Like I said, they knew I had not worked in the industry.
Yeah.
So I guess I would say, if you have the time to be a little over-prepared, there's nothing wrong. So still go thinking that fundamentals are key, but if you have one more day to prepare and you want to read a little more into that particular technology or particular company's technology, I think that could cover more bases than I covered.
Gotcha. So let's talk specifically about your role currently at Cummins. How did you come across your specific role at Cummins? I believe it's the electronics engineer also. How did you come across that role in particular?
Right. So at Cummins, my history goes back right from 2016, so long time back when I was my first internship. I did my first internship in thermal sciences, so thermodynamics, fluids. I am. I think I couldn't do thermodynamics and fluids, but I was not that big a fan. Didn't enjoy it so much. So at the end of the internship, they asked me, "What do you want to learn more about?" And I said, "I want to learn more about controls engineering." So I got my next internship in controls, and that year, in school, we actually studied our first and second controls class, ME 365, 375. I really enjoyed those classes. Felt like everything was coming together. We had all aspects of mechanical engineering kind of joining hands. We had the mechanical aspect also. We were still like doing free body diagrams and all of that, and then we were going beyond that. We had some of the circuits we learned and stuff like that. So when that happened, it was good. I enjoyed it, and I was fortunate that when I told Cummins after my first internship that I want to explore controls, they actually gave me a role in controls. So I got my next internship in controls, and in that team, I think just the work atmosphere was great. Everyone was very welcoming. I learned a lot, and that added to the fact that I liked controls and I liked engines. So it was all adding up, and I enjoyed that experience a lot. So when I enjoyed the experience, then I literally said I want to do an internship again in that same team, and they gave me an internship in the same team. And then eventually I just ended up joining the team. So I think I was very lucky that in my second internship itself, I found something that I really like. That, like we said earlier, it started aligning with everything, with my interests, with my values. The team atmosphere was great, was like what I like to work in. So when all of that aligned, I kind of knew that this is a role I'm really really interested in. And then because I'd done 2 internships with them, obviously the interview process was very straightforward for me. I didn't have to do interviews and stuff because my internships were my interviews. So obviously, and that's, people sometimes take it lightly, but it's not. Like, you have to do well on your internships. Don't just think that, oh, I got an internship, that means they will hire me. That's not true.
Yeah.
In any company. Yeah. Definitely doing the internships, I would put in good amount of effort, get my projects done, and get to learn about the team, and work well with them, which is also key. If you're just getting your work done but you're not trying to become a part of the team, then I don't know, that doesn't give a very good impression. Even though you're an intern, your goal should be for those 3 months to just be like any other team member within this. I think all of that worked well, and that's how I came across this role, and I managed to get it.
Gotcha. So I was going to ask you, how did you get an interview for this role in particular? Was there even an interview for the role, or?
The thing is, after my first internship within thermal and fluid sciences, I think what really helped was the end of the internship, or not end, during the internship, I created a tool in MATLAB. This was like kind of like my own project during the internship. So I had like the work that my manager gave me, and then I had some free time. So in the free time, I created a tool for them to do some work. And I think that was a really cool thing that helped, because when they saw that a lot of controls engineering in Cummins is done through MATLAB simulating. So when they saw that, and then I said that I'm interested in controls, I think that kind of helped me not need an interview or anything. They were like, okay, it looks like this guy actually is interested, and he's already displayed that he can use some of his skills. So that's, I guess, another good point here, that if you're at an internship and you have found a role, not your own role, but you found another role in the company that you are interested in, you can work towards it. Put in a little extra effort, show that you are actually capable of it while you're at the company. If you can do that, it might just help. And this also comes through networking. So that means in the company, don't just sit and do your internship in your role. Talk to other people, understand what they do. If you find someone who does something cool and something interesting, see if you can, show them that you have some skills on while you're there, and work towards it. Because if you do that, then probably they might not even interview. Because that's what happened to me. I did not have to interview for this role.
Amazing. So you networked with other people. You identified that this new particular team might have a role that's interesting for me. And then second, you had extra time during your internship, so you worked on a project that was relevant for that team. And so in that way, it was kind of like your interview, and you did not just say that, hey, I'm interested in this. You showed that through your project, which is phenomenal. So you did not have an interview process when you were getting that full-time offer, right?
Yeah, I did not have an interview process.
Gotcha, gotcha. So like, when did you get your full-time offer from Cummins?
When I got around October 2018, so that's 2 months. No, September. So 3 months before I graduated.
3 months before you graduated, and your internship finished in which month?
In August.
In August.
So
Okay.
August 2018 was my last internship at Cummins, and September 2018 I had an offer.
Gotcha. So August, you finished your internship. You directly, automatically got the offer. You did not like do anything between that. Okay, gotcha. All right. I think that kind of gives a journey of Ali Mandiwala's transition from college to job. And you talked about the generic approach. You talked about the Cummins specific approach. Any last piece of advice to any international student right now listening to this and wanting to get a full-time opportunity in the US?
Definitely. My last piece of advice, I guess, would be that no matter what, no matter what people around you are telling you, just put your head down and work, towards it. You will hear, and you probably have experienced this also, you will hear a lot of people say, oh, you're international, it's very hard to get a job. It's fine if you're not getting something. Yes, maybe all of that is true, but at the end of the day, effort does pay off. So put good targeted effort, work hard. There are jobs out there, there's no doubt. They're not so many, they're probably few in number, but there are jobs out there. If you're willing to put the effort and put your head down and identify some of these things we spoke about, which is understand yourself as a person and what work you want to do clearly, I think you can make it. Like you can get a job.
Amazing. I'm sure that anyone listening to this is going to learn a lot from the insights that you shared. Thanks a lot, Ali, for taking the time to speak with us.
Yeah, thank you.